Hello to all Demonlanders out there and all people interested in stats. My name's Binman. This is the Binman Stat File Preview podcast of the upcoming game this week against the Roos at Darklands. Before I go any further, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I'm recording this podcast, the Bunurong people. But also, it's Friday, just ticked over to Friday afternoon. So once I've completed this, Andy, when he gets a chance, will upload. So hopefully, Demonland listeners will get a chance to listen to this podcast ahead of the game. Apologies for not having it done earlier. It's been a bit of a busy week as I've returned to normal life after a fantastic trip away in Southeast Asia. So back on deck, I went to the Tigers game on Richmond, as I discussed on the Demonland podcast on Monday with George. But really looking forward to this particular preview. A bit of transparency. I haven't watched a hell of a lot of the Roos games this season. It is. I was really interested to do a bit of a dive on them and to see where they're at. And in my mind, part of the problem of not having seen them is I'd had some assumptions about the way they play, and the stats slightly contradict that. So that's interesting in terms of one of the benefits of using stats to analyse footy. They're not the be and all and end all, and the eye is always the starting point. Watch the game, watch it again in my case, and do a dive into the numbers. But certainly they do help to sort of, I guess, push against a confirmation bias, which I thought the Roos sort of were more meat and potato player team, I should say, than the numbers indicate they are. But I'll get into that in detail as we go through. So, round 19, D's versus the Roos, Saturday afternoon, 4:15 at the Darklands. We'll have a look at the Willow ratings in terms of how the teams match up against each other. Just some high-level stuff. We've head-to-head the 78 times the Roos have beaten us, 91 times we've beaten the Roos. So it's nice to be positive in that space in terms of the win-loss column. But as I noted on the podcast on Monday, interestingly, the venue record is really unbalanced. They had the wood on us for ages, the Roos. So I'll just have a sip of coffee here. Apology for that. I should have drunk my coffee beforehand. But the record of the venue is 9-1, and that's that's one of our worst records, I would say, outside of Cardinia Park, probably against a particular team. Obviously, probably our record is way worse than that. Cardinia Park against the Cats. 9-1. So the last 10 matches is 8-2 our way. However, obviously a big chunk of those games have been at the MCG, including we beat them last year, 119. That was at the Darklands, so that was one in our column. The previous one to that, they smashed us, and interestingly, Bowie referenced that. So long memories, these fellas. Round 2, 125 points they put past us to 66 points, and that after our loss against the Giants the week before, that really sort of cemented the Darklands over the Demons. So struggle that season was from that point on. But I thought it was fascinating that Bowie referenced that game in terms of this game, and I wouldn't be surprised if King, although he wouldn't, I think he probably would bat this question away, raised it in the post-match debrief he has with the players after the win over the Tigers, because Bowie was interviewed directly after in the change rooms after, and that was what he referenced. Some of the other high-level numbers in terms of this year, their rating is minus 4.9 for attack. Ours is 7.6. Then minus 5.4 rating points for defence. We're plus 1.3. Up from, as I mentioned last week, from negative in round 10 or 11. We're really trending well in the defensive space. Overall, we're 8.8. is our rating plus 8.8, and they're negative 10.4. So I think that is a pretty good indication of where the two teams are at. The average team, the lineup information is the average age for, believe it or not, for the Roos in this game is 26. Ours is 25.7, and I'll dig into that a little bit later. But I'd be a little bit worried if I was a Roos fan about where they are at in this current rebuild. So they've really got no excuses in this game in terms of age or experience. But you watch the commentators say, put caveats on the performance pre-game and post-game about North Melbourne, about their relative inexperience. So keep these numbers in mind when they trot out that rubbish that they'll inevitably will in the analysis. So not only is their average age higher than us with the team that's been selected, their average matches is higher. So 121.3 average matches per player in this game. For them, 105.3 for us. That's a significant gap in experience between the two teams. Again, keep that in mind when the analysts talk about the rebuild and the youth of the North Melbourne team. And again, that number would really worry me. As I'll talk about in a sec, their injury list, their injury run with injury this year has been really terrific. It changes just in terms of who's in and out. I'll just bring this up here. So, in terms of the age and experience is there. The ins and outs in terms of the net impact of the ins and outs. So, I'll go into them in a sec. But out for us is Bailey Laurie and Aidan Johnson, and in is Heath and Bailey Fritsch, and out in for them is Bailey Scott and Josh Goda, and out is Blamiers and Banch. Net impact is +2 in terms of player ratings. Net impact for us, though, is plus 9.7. So that is a huge in terms of, addition of strength to our side. So a real positive for us in that space. Looking at the information around the last few games that both teams have played. So our last three encounters, as I said, were 119 to 83 in last year, July 13th, 25, and round 18 last season. Geez, my memories. It was perhaps at the last game that Goody coached. I've got a feeling it was. Certainly he was sacked after a win. We touched them up, but they touched us up earlier in the season, 125 to 66, in a really dispiriting performance at Darklands. The previous encounter was we just got over the top of them at the G, 70 to 67 in 2024, round 15. In terms of the recent form, the Roos are 13th. They've had 8 wins, 9 losses. We're 6th. We've had 11 wins, 6 losses. The last 5 games for the Roos is they lost last week in a heartbreaker. Probably should have won that game from what I saw in the highlights, 89 to 85. Couldn't get the job done in the end. The Pies rolled them. 73 to 52 the week before against Port Adelaide, another game they would have been hoping to win, albeit that was at Adelaide Oval. Then they had strung 3 wins in a row together. They rolled Essendon, but only 14 points as it turned out. They rolled Richmond, 73 to 48, in another low-scoring game, and they just got over the top of the Eagles, 74 to 73. So basically played the 3 bottom teams, their 3 wins before that. We, of course, smashed the Tigers last week in an entertaining game. One of the games of the season, or certainly the first half of the season, as Joey Montagna noted on the coverage of the game, 125 to 90, smashed the Hawks. We lost to Crows down in Adelaide, and then we rolled Essendon, and we beat the Pies on King's birthday. Yay to that. In terms of the last 5 games, looking at the info for the last 5 games between these two teams, in the last 5 games, they've only averaged 72.6 per game, and that's despite 3 wins against bottom teams. Albeit it is wintry, and that was a phase of low scoring, but it hasn't hurt us too much. So our average points for in that same period is 95.2, and our average points against are only 71.8. Their average points against are 69.6. Low scoring games. Average winning margin 33.5 to us, 13.3 for them. Average losing margin 12.5. This is in the last 5 games for them, and 17 for us. Average total match points 167 to us, 142.2. It's a bit hard to tell because I didn't really watch these games the Roos played, but I do wonder whether, there's some pretty low-scoring games. I can't, I was away for a couple of them, so I don't know what the weather was like. But you'd expect against those lower teams that the Roos would certainly be wanting to score a little bit more than they have been all season, but particularly in the last 4 or 5 matches when they've played teams below them on the ladder. As I mentioned, the outs for the in selection, just some comments about that. Roos out as Blamire and Blanche, put them together and you get Blanche. That's about as boring as I can do with my jokes about their outs. I don't even know either of those players, I have to say. In Bailey Scott, Josh Goda, and ditto for them. The Goda, not a bad name, I guess, for a sportsman. Our out, I thought Laurie was a bit unlucky to get dropped. Didn't see that coming. AJ out. Well, I did say I thought Laurie might be potentially Cross might come in, maybe. And our ins are Fritter and Heath. If Fritter being fit was always a lock to come back in. I was surprised Pets didn't come in, but it sounds like they're managing him. He trained fully during the week, so there's no issue on that front. I thought with him coming out, Melk would come. With Fritter coming back in, Melk would come out. Positive, I think, that they didn't select Petty, keep him in really the 100% best nick possibly for our huge clash Friday night in the following week against the Cats. Let's not jump ahead of ourselves. If Fritter was coming in, I assume Melk would come out. That didn't happen. So Melk played fantastic. So, I think with Petty not coming back in, maybe that was what swung it in his favour. Hopefully he will play to the level he did last week, particularly in that first half. He was awesome. As I said, he was a big factor in us snuffing out any hope that the Tigers had of a win. I think from his first quarter was enormous last week. Again, I mentioned this on the Demonland podcast, but he was in our first 4 goals. He kicked 2 of them. He gave an assist, the pass to JVR for one of them, and he was involved in the scoring chain that led to the 4th. So hugely influential in how we started that game, and that was a big factor in our win. I thought AJ would come out, but I thought Heath was injured. I'm not even sure, to be honest, when he last played a game of footy. It might be a few weeks ago. So I was really surprised that he came in. I think, though, it's a good move. And I'll talk a little bit about why I think that when I talk about the key players for the Roos. AJ wasn't a shock. I thought he played okay. But I think they're good changes for us. Heath in will really help Maxi out, mitigate the impact of Jerry's thugness, if you want to call it that. And Fritter, who's been in awesome form and really back to his very best. So I've talked about the form, the betting. $1.42 we are to $2.90. They're $2.90. I think that's about right, and that really indicates where these two teams are at. $2.90 for them. That you wouldn't think a game between a team in our position and them 13th would be those odds, I think, but it is a reflection of the strength of the team as I sort of discussed in terms of the relative ratings of these two teams. So overall ratings minus 10.4 to plus 8.8. And just on that, so I talked last week, we are approaching that mythical premiership window that they talk about on the Fox Sports shows, the 360 or whatever, where top 6 for defence and top 6 for or in terms of defensive rating. I think it's an that and attack. We're finally in that window, so up with the big boys in terms of our defensive and offensive rating. So a huge improvement in our defensive rating in the last since about round 10, actually. So I think those odds are both accurate and a reflection, though, a positive reflection of where we're at, where the market sees our strengths, and sort of reflecting that as well. We're $2 to make the top six, so even money bet to make the top six. I think that's actually a little bit long, so I'm tempted to break my embargo on D's betting and suggest with my betting mate that I bet with that we have a good solid bet on that, because I think we should be about $1.60 to make top six, to be honest. The line is always a really good indicator, particularly this late in the day with only 24 hours till game time. Not so much at the beginning. It's when it's set, that line set by the bookmaker. And as the money comes in, the market sort of moves that line back and forth. So with a day out, probably with a reasonable amount of in the pool where the line is 16.5, so they're plus 16.5. Factor to consider with that is thanks AFL. This has just been terrific from you this season. We've just had just the most woeful fixture. It's unbelievable. It's just wouldn't happen to one of the big clubs. It is just unforgivable. I think another 6-day break to their 8-day break. I read somewhere, I'll get these numbers all mixed up, I'm sure, but I read somewhere on Demonland that it's never happened before, that the number of times, we're the most number of times ever that one team has had such a disadvantage over another in terms of the difference in days break between games. So this is another one, and we have yet another one coming up. It's unbelievable. So there's only another 6 days, or 7 days, I should say. No, 6 days into the Cats game, and they get a full 8-day break. It's unbelievable. So really, really frustrating. So no, they get a 7-day break. So it's a 6-day break to a 7-day break against the Cats. But even with that break in mind, I think that line is value for us. So I think we'll win by more than 16.5 points. I suspect we're really wound up. I was super impressed how we ran out that game against the Tigers. 204 was our pressure rating in the last quarter, one of our highest for the season. Tells me that they're wound up, they're looking to roll. We match up well against the Roos, and I think we'll smash them. So I'm looking for a 5 to 6 goal win here. That would be, I'd probably put the line, if I was setting that market, at about 22, 23 points. So 4-goal win. So I think that line value is pretty good value. Weather, well, it should be not applicable. I say it not applicable because there's no rhyme or reason in terms of when the AFL determine that it's time or not time to open the roof. I can't even get some sort of line of sight on why they choose that. It's something to do with shadows and whatnot. So it's going to be a beautiful day outside tomorrow. So 15 degrees, 16 degrees and sunny. So typically AFL opaqueness, and you wouldn't know. So knowing our luck, they will open the roof and it'll be in our eyes for most of the game. So hopefully they will open the roof, because I've only been to one game there, maybe two, with the roof open, and it's a much better experience, albeit half the ground's in darkness. But that's only a problem for the broadcasters, not for people who have paid the money going along to the footy. All right, quick overview of the relative strengths and weaknesses of these two teams. So in terms of team stats, not surprisingly, given our rating points, we're beat them in most of them. So most of these are differentials, not all of them. But, we're a forward half team 51.8% of the time, 48.4% of the time for them. Time of possession, this is a good indicator of the two different types. I thought they would be more of a forward half team. That's something that I probably misunderstood a little bit about them. They're plus 1.6 for time in possession. We're minus 2.5 for time in possession. So it shows that, they're a much more sort of control disposal team than I thought they were. We're a go-forward territory team, low disposal territory team. So this was a huge one, I thought. And again, this was a surprise for me. We're plus 3.8 for contested possessions. Differentials this season, they're only plus 1.8. Surprising for a Clarkson coach team, I think. We're plus 1.7 for clearances, only a touch above them. So all of our attacking numbers are much more positive. This is something that's a real opportunity to leverage for us, a real strength. We're in our attack is, we're averaging 98 points a game. They're only averaging 84. We're 53.9 points per game from turnover. They're only scoring 44.5. We have them for stoppages, so we're 39.1 per game for stoppages, so they're 35. So we're actually, I was really surprised, and I'll touch on this a little bit later, but they're a much better transition team than I thought they were. And I had it in my mind that was a real struggle for them, their transition from the back half. Partly that was influenced by some analysis on 360 a few weeks ago, which I should have just ignored, because they're actually just we're one of the best teams in the AFL at transitioning for the back half, and they're just behind us on a whole bunch of important metrics in that space, including scores for not so much scores for inside 50, which I'll get to in a second, but their chain to score percentage ours is 22.5% of the time. Our possession chains result in a score. They're just behind us, 22.3, but this is the one that's important. D50 to forward 50 percentage. So defensive 50 to forward 50 percentage, bang on the same 23.8% of the time, both teams. So they're moving it okay from the back half. A bit like the Tigers, though, the issue for them is they're not getting it inside 50 enough. So we're averaging 57.9 inside 50s per game. They're a woeful 49.8. So, as much as you could, you've got a good percentage from moving from the back half. That's not going to fly. That's why they're not scoring enough, because they're not getting it inside 50 enough. So we're having a 28.9 shots per game. They're 24.9 shots a game. That's 4 less shots per game. That's a lot. But when they do get it inside 50, interestingly, they've got a better percentage, scoring percentage. So they're scoring 46.8% of the time when they get it inside 50. We're scoring 44.8% of the time. So once they get it in there, they're pretty effective at turning that into a score. This is great. Defensively, we have them for most measures, sort of key stats in the defensive thing. It's something that's really improved for us. We're averaging 89.9 a game. You might remember around 10, that was 101. So, in 8 or 7 times we played, because we had our bye. That's just terrific. Now, there is a caveat with the weather, but the last game, we did play Hawthorn in decent weather in a high-scoring game. Richmond last week was a bit slippery, but it was a high-scoring game as well. So, to get that scoring, the average defensive down to 89.9 in 7 games of footy is awesome. And I'll talk a bit about our defensive unit and the importance of that in this game in a little bit. Defending points from turnover, they defend points from turnover a little bit better. They're only getting 48.8 on average against them on turnover. We're 50.4. My sense of that, though, is that that's related to the fact they don't take the same number of risks we do in terms of moving the ball from the back half. They're a low-risk team. We're a high-risk team. So otherwise, we have them pretty much covered. We defend stoppages better than them. We defend scoring chains better than them. Crucially, we just, as I mentioned before, the D50 to forward 50 attacking, we defend ball movement from D50 to forward 50 better than them. So we also having more shots for inside 50. So our opponents are having less shots once they get inside 50, I should say. So in terms of the rating player, the rating in terms of the relative strengths of both teams and the players who are rated highly. Let's have a look here. So this season, their top-rated players are Tristan Xerri. So interestingly, the last 3 games, I think I'm right in saying, was it Hawthorn? Not the last 3 games. So certainly last week, Dan Curvis was their highest-rated player in the sort of mid-14s. And, of course, our ruckman is also our highest-rated player, the difference being his actual rating is his player rating is significantly better than that, 17. So 18.8, I should say 17. Xerri so their ruckman is their number 1 rated player. 14.4 is his player rating. The big difference is time on ground. 74.9% of the time Xerri's on the ground. Our aerobic beast. Gorney is on the ground 82.6% of the time, which is really remarkable, actually. So, Zeri is a top-rated player, not one of my favourite players, it must be said. He's averaging 14.7 contested possessions, which is really impressive. Maxi's 13.5. His clearances, they're both interestingly 6.4 clearances per game each. So contested marks, Maxi's 1.5 and Jerry's 1.1. So he's been fantastic this year, Gorney, with his contested marking. I think he's playing the best footy he's played ever. It's a big call, but I think it's certainly borne out by the player ratings at the very least. It's his highest rated season ever, I think. I'm right in saying. So there are other rated players. So Luke Davis-Uniacke is their second highest rated player, 14.1. Harry Sheasel is their third highest rated player, 12.7. George Wardlaw is their fourth highest rated player, 13.2. Finn O'Sullivan rounds it out, 9. Sorry, what am I saying? That's so it's 14.3 for Uniacke, Sheasel's 13.1, George Wardlow's 12.8, big out. Finn O'Sullivan 11.3, Luke Parker 10.4, Jai Simpkin and Caleb Daniel rounds out their sort of roughly top 10. Ours are Gorney, Pickett, Cozzy is number 2. His ratings dropped off a little bit in the last little bit. To my eye, looks like he might be carrying something. So hopefully he's back to his best this week. So he's 16.3. He was still amazing last week anyway. His rating was 13. That's still a pretty good game of footy. Kay Chandler is our third highest rated player. Jack Steele, fourth. Tommy Sparrow, which I'll speak to a little bit in a sec, 15. He's our fifth highest rated player. Then Bowery, Rivers, Fritter and Sharp is sort of our rough top 10. So in terms of the comparative, so that's an overview of some of the data from Willow in terms of the strengths and weaknesses and the player ratings. The injury, I got the ins and outs before, didn't I? So I'll speak a little bit more detail about those ins and outs. But I think for them, their injury list has been pretty bloody good this season. They've really, it's hard to. They've had a lot of sort of positives happen for them this year in terms of a draw, but also their injury. Their injury list has only got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players on it. George Wardler, Archer, Jackson Archer, Blamiers, Pink, Powell, and Threadgold. From my eye, not knowing probably their list as well as others, but Wardlaw is one of their best players. He's a huge out this weekend. I think that's massively swung this game in our favour because he's exactly the sort of player they desperately needed. He is out for 3-4 weeks with a hammy, which, given who they've got coming up, they're going to really, really miss him. Can't see them making top 6 on the back of that. Jackson Archer, I'm not sure if you consider him best 23. Toby Pink, I would. He's a good player, and Tom Powell's probably borderline. So at best, 3 top 23 players out. They've had a great run with injury this year, and 6 on their injury list now, only 3 of which could be sort of even 2 could be categorically considered top 20 or best 23 locks. George Wardlaw, however, is definitely in their top 5 players, so he's a massive out. Our injury list is looking heaps better right at the right time of the season. I absolutely love that. So I'm not including Pets. He trained fully, and as I mentioned before, he trained fully during the week, and I think they're holding him back for next week, and which I really love that approach. So on our injury list, we've only got Viney, Myercheck, Cully, Lindsay, AMW, all 5 of them, maybe not AMW with his ACL, but so that's 4 of our best 23 out. So, comparatively, none of them are probably our top 5 players. So I think we're about even in terms of impact by injury. I looked at the Willow stats. So the next one is key opposition players. So I think for me, the key arguably is Tristan Xerri. So a player that I think that Maxi he doesn't struggle against any ruckman, but the ruckman that give him the most challenge, I think, are ones like Nankervis and Briggs and Jerry, who are physical. I really, really like the way King has used Maxi this year. I thought it was really clever. I was trying to work out, in my mind last week, I mentioned that the clearances and winning scores from clearances weren't going to be the issue that against the Tigers. It weren't such a priority as it is for normally when we play the best teams. And I think that was borne out by the numbers. We thrashed them, yet they had our measure scores from around the ground stoppages from memory. They were plus 18 or something from around the ground stoppages, and I was trying to nut out why that was, and I sort of came to a conclusion during the week that I think AJ was used around the ground stoppages a lot, and Maxi wasn't, and a large part of that was to protect Maxi from being thumped by Nankervis and Bolter, and I wonder whether the same thing will happen this week, actually, in terms of how they'll manage Jerry. And I'm pretty sort of certain that was part of the thinking of Heath coming into the side, is to take those around the ground stoppages. Leaving aside the fact that I'm not a huge Seri fan, I'm quite the opposite. He's a super important player for them generally. He's their top-rated player this season, as I mentioned before, but in particular this match because, of course, Maxi is such a colossus of the game, and as I've talked about it, ad infinitum, he's the most influential player in footy. So, of course, the opposition ruckman every time we play anyone is going to be important. He's had a groin issue, but he was back to his best against the Pies last week, was able to spend more time at centre bounces and rucking in around the ground, and had a huge game against the Pies big man, the Pies ruck, Darcy Cameron. And Jerry had a huge game last week. He had 22 disposals, 5 clearances, 7 tackles and 32 hit-outs. I think he will need to produce something like that to get anywhere, to match Maxi. And I think to win the game, if they've got any chance of winning the game, he's going to have to best Maxi and the combo with Heath. And I just can't see that happening. But, that's why he's such a critical player, sort of indicating his importance. As I mentioned before, he's averaging 14.69 contested possessions per game for the Roos. That's number one. So number one for the Roos for contested possession per game. So he's really important from that perspective as well, because that'll be a key factor in this game, the contest and pressure. He's also a thug who targets Max whenever he has a chance. So I'm really hoping the umpires look after him. I don't think it was any coincidence whatsoever that King raised that in the post-match presser after the Roos game. The issue about top 5 players in the AFL is number 2, by the way, Maxi now, number 2 in the AFL. Just fantastic. Top 5 players, and the Bond's number 1 by top 5 players, the other 4 get looked after, Maxi doesn't. So I think they were really pointed comments. 1, because, again, the Tigers look to do it, but 2, ahead of this Roos game, because, Clarkson, he often targets players. And I read somewhere on Demonland that there was a period where the Hawks had a KPI was to how many times they could get into Maxi per game. So I have no doubt they'll look to physically get into Maxi. I hope the umpires look after it, but I think Heath coming in is a really excellent tactical ploy by King to mitigate that. So nonetheless, Jerry is going to be hugely important. Sheasel's the other one, really. He's number 1 for the Roos for average uncontested disposals per game, number 1 for effective disposals per game for them, number 1 for score involvements. I think shut him down and it takes away a lot of their ability to transition the ball and to hurt us on turnover. Perhaps that's a job for Steele to not tag him, but to run with roll. Luke Davies-Uniacke, as I said, is the second highest. Did I say second highest rated player? He's their he's their second highest rated player this season. So 14.3. a hugely important player for them. He's a bit of a talisman. He's also, a physical player and the contest will be critical in this match. He had a huge game against the Pies a couple of weeks back, so he showed how damaging he can be in their loss against the Pies 2 weeks back. He had, in that game, LDU had 25.2 disposals and team high 7. He averages 25.2 disposals per game, but in that game against the Pies, he had team high 7 clearances, team high 7 inside 50s, team high 7 scoring involvements, and also had 31 disposals, so 6 more than his season average, and 523 metres gained. His physicality will be really important, as will his ball winning ability. He's number 1 for the Roos for centre clearances per game, so a really important player, and maybe Steele goes to him, not Sheasel, or maybe Colt goes to him when he pushes forward. It'll be really interesting to see how Colt is played. So yeah, definitely an important player for them, one that we'll need to look to shut down. Other players, I think, Larkey has been a little bit off this season, but certainly with his kicking, I think part of the problem for Larkey is an excellent player, old school forward. I always loved him. One of his strengths has been his kicking. So, it's unlucky for them that that's dropped off. So, you've got to expect that players will play the best. So he's definitely someone that we're going to have to look to shut down. And without Petty coming back in, that robs us a little bit of flexibility. I think I really like our defensive unit. Can't see it changing, to be honest. So, but it does lack a little bit of one-on-one height. But Disco probably will go to Larkey and probably look to exploit Larkey's relative lack of striding speed and really run off him. I love the way Disco's playing at the moment. And so we could turn defence into attack, I think, and really sort of look to take advantage of Larkey's. He likes to get up and down the ground, Larkey, and maybe I'm underselling his speed, but I think Disco will have his measure, but an important player nonetheless. Just others, probably, not the highlight. Caleb Daniel averages 24 disposals per game, 15.5 of which, 15.5 of which are kicks. And he's super important to their transition game and how they move it from the half back line is definitely, similar to Amon that I talked about in the Hawks preview and Impey. He's really important to that sort of way they like to control the ball. It's actually really interesting how Hawthorn's game plan, at least on paper, is very similar in some respects to the Roos, who like to control the footy in the back half before they move the ball. We do not hold the ball. We move forward, go, and that's why we're so exciting to watch often. I'll speak to, I think that's overplayed a little bit. They have a very similar method to the Hawks, and given the Mitchell relationship with Clarkson, and it's an interesting sort of evolution of both those games, I think. But Daniel, it's a bit of a worry. I would have thought, this is no knock on Daniel, but perhaps it is that he's such an important player to them because he's at the back end of his career and can be exploited. He's not super quick, but important. So I think if we can shut him down, they'll struggle to exit their defensive half. He plays that classic quarterback role and sets the game, the ground up for them a little bit. If we can really get in his grill and shut his influence down as a defender, I think that'll go a long way to us winning as well. Similarly, Comden is number 1 in the for the Roos for intercepts per game. Shut him down. Make sure he doesn't get those intercept marks and intercepts. They will really struggle to transition, I think, and we can go to work on scoring from the ground balls if he's not intercept marking. And on the same thing, Parker is number 1 for the Roos for metres gained, and so obviously important, therefore, for how they transition the ball. So important to sort of limit his influence. And if we can do all of that, I think they will struggle to move the ball and put a winning score on. And so those 3 players are key to shut down. Again, it's a bit of a concern, I would have thought, for them, the importance of Caleb Daniel and Parker to how they play, given where they're at in their careers. So just a quick comment about these players. I've talked a lot about Maxi and Chin this season, and Cos. Just a shout out to Tom Sparrow's best season, no doubt at all. He's averaging career highs, 22 disposals, 5.4 clearances, 6.1 tackles. His pressure has been enormous. 4.7 inside 50s. He's been a key to our improvement, massive key. His pressure rating is off the charts. His consistency is awesome. His kicking is just, he's always been a good kick, but now he's really being more creative with his kicking. He's thrived under King. I think, obviously he's getting more midfield minutes. That's been massive for him and his game, but it's really enabled his sort of, he's gone up a level. There's no question about that at all. Just really love the way he's going about his footy. He's, as I said, he's also a sort of leader, talisman type. He's been a joy to watch this season, and loving how he's going about his footy. Mentioned before, he's one, two, three, four. He's our fifth highest rated player this season with a player rating 12.7, and he's on the ground only 73.9% of the time. So he's used as an impact player out of the centre. And just on that, one of the fascinating things for me this season is, you might remember against the Dockers in round whatever that was in the early part of the season, we used 11 players running through the centre bounce attendances, and I thought that might indicate a template of the way King might set up their systems and centre bounce structures, but I couldn't be further from the truth. Way wrong on that. We use 5 tops, but 4 basically, and when you use 5, the fifth is only getting 1 or 2. So he's one of the 4 with Steele, him, Cos, and the fourth player that will come to mind in a minute. So he's been really, really, I think, a huge part. Sparrow, this is a huge part of our rise up the ladder this season and how well we've performed. All right, keys to winning. Goes without saying, week in, week out, contest and pressure remain undefeated. Win the contest battle and pressure battle. We will win this game. And it's an area we can really leverage. I mentioned being a bit surprised about the sort of statistical profile of the Roos because it didn't sort of marry up to what I had guessed it might be. So we're number 5 for average contested possessions per game, up from number 6 3 weeks ago. So we're really ramping up our pressure as we move forward into the Premiership runway, as they call this last sort of block of or the phase of the season. They are 15th for average contested possessions per game. Disappointing, I would have thought, for a Clarkson coach team, because he's always had an emphasis on all the best teams are, they are high up on the contest and pressure rating. So 15th for average contested possessions per game. I would have thought Clarkson, that was surprising to me. Similarly, they 13th for tackles for per game, so that was a surprise as well. We're really strong in all of the pressure and contest numbers. So, for instance, we're number 4 for post clearance equity points and number 3 for forward half intercepts. Win the clearance and stoppage battle, both the totals. So the totals helps you. Obviously, you win more stoppages and clearances. Then it helps getting field position and territory. So that's really important to the way we play, because territory is so important to the way we play. But equally important, more so, is scores from those sources. It's been really fascinating. There's been a real drop off across the AFL in the number of stoppages in total. Like, I think I'm right in saying it's 10 to 15% less stoppages this season, which puts a real emphasis on those outside players who can run and carry. But it also puts I guess it means that it also sort of the corollary of that is it becomes even more important to score from them when you can, because there's fewer of them. But the footy's changed, as I've talked about. 60% roughly of total scores are now from turnovers, 40% roughly, or a bit less, 35 from stoppages. That was in 2018. That was the exact opposite. So nonetheless, I think that in this game it's going to be super important. I said against the Tigers I didn't think it would be as critical as it normally was, because I think that that we had other areas and strengths that we could leverage, and that's what happened. So they beat us, in the stoppage and clearances, all scores from stoppage. I think, as I said, they were plus 18. But it will be it will be critical in this contest. I have no doubt about that. And we have got a clear advantage in this space that we can really look to lean into. So I think, the winning and losing battle is as much about sort of mitigating, or it's about mitigating the strengths of the opposition and taking them away, but also leveraging the advantages you have over the opposition and really leaning into them and taking advantage of that. And this is one area we have a clear advantage of them. We are number two, for example, for average centre clearances in total behind the Lions. They are number 13 for average centre clearances per game. We're number two in the AFL for total number of clearances. They're number 11 for total number of clearances. We're number three for scores from all stoppages, behind the Lions and Freo. They're not actually too bad. In fact, it's one of their best ratings, but still below us. They're number 7 for scores from all stoppages. Our scores from the centre bounce have dropped off a little bit, and it's actually been quite an interesting thing to see. That's happening across the AFL. Teams aren't scoring as much out of the centre square as they were. I think teams have wised up on that defensively a little bit, but we're still number 10 in the AFL for the percentage of overall score origin. So 10% of our scores come from centre bounces. We're number 10, 12.4% of our overall scores start at the centre bounce. They're number 18 for that stat. So only 9.6 of their percent of their scores come from the centre bounce, or the origin is the centre bounce. So that's a big difference in the two teams and points to an advantage for us. We're number 2 for hit outs to advantage, and surprisingly, given Jerry is a sort of old school sort of muscle hit out to advantage player, they're number 14 for hit out to advantage. So a real strength for us or a real opportunity to leverage in that space. Where win the scores from turnovers are always important, perhaps less so in this game, where it's an opportunity for them. We are 10th in the AFL for most turnovers per game. Now, that's partly related to we're a high risk team. So, high risk, high reward, but also you can get punished. And so you take risky kicks like the one Cozzy did, a couple of them back into the corridor against the Tigers, and you run the risk, obviously, of turning that ball over. They are, conversely, they're number 18 for turnovers, indicating they control the ball well, but it perhaps sort of suggests they're risk averse, which is likely a big factor in their inability to kick winning scores. You can't make a cake and all of that. You've got to take some risks there. So hopefully they'll dial up their risk-reward thing to take more risks, and we'll be able to punish them in this game. Conversely, though, so 18 for turnover, they don't turn the ball over. That's to do partly with the way they like to control the ball. Conversely, we are number 7 with a bullet for intercepts. That's something we've really improved in the last 6 to 7 weeks, and they're 18th for intercepts. So suggests we'll get our opportunities to hurt them with our intercepts and utilise our ability to transition the ball from the back half, which is a huge strength of ours, as evidenced last week. Amazing. We scored 70 points. What was it? 111 we scored last week, 70 of which, so well and truly over half of them were from our defensive half last week. That is nuts. As I flagged before, or sort of touched on before, I must say I was really surprised, though, at how well the Roos are going in terms of transitioning from the back half. That to be honest, surprised me looking at the numbers. And so, in terms of some of that, the transition numbers, change to score percentage, of their scores, Fremantle are number 1, 25.1% of their chains result in a score. We're 6 for that, 22.5, but the Roos are only a touch behind us, 22.3. D50 to forward 50 transition. The Swans are on top, Giants, Brisbane. We're down in 9th. We're 9th and they're 10th, so just below us. Defensive 50 to score 50 percentage. The Giants actually are on top, so that's interesting. 12.6% of the time, and the Roos are actually better than us in this space. They're number 9 in the AFL. Number 8 in the AFL, we're number 10. Defensive hard to forward 50 percentage. Again, that's something they match up well with us. We're 6 and they are 10th. So, and defensive half to score percentage, we're number 2 in the AFL, which indicates how well we move the ball from the back half. 15.5% of the time, we get it from our defensive half and score. When those chains we go from the back half, that's second only to Freo, who are 17.1% of the time. Matches up super well, but much to my surprise, the Roos are third for that number, 14.9, third in the AFL for defensive half to score percentage. That's impressive, and I have to say somewhat surprising. So that battle will be critical. Moving it from the back half and really minimising their scores from turnover and maximising ours. I think a really important part of this match will be winning the contested marking, winning the aerial contest. We have been brilliant this year, much to my pleasure. It's been years, it feels like, since we've been a gun contested marking side. We're travelling super in this space. So it's really important to our game plan, because if we don't mark the ball, we'll bring it to get ground. But each time you get a contested mark, it is just like gold dust. We're number 4 in the AFL for average contested marks per game. We are what's that? So 10 bang on per game. Just out of interest, Brisbane's number 1, Sydney's number 2, Fremantle is number 3. We're 4, Hawthorn are 5, Adelaide are 6, Geelong are 7th, indicating how important this particular stat is in modern footy, because it's not just about sort of contested marks in of themselves. It's about also controlling territory, and of course you control the tempo of the game. You can take those contested marks. They're really like gold dust. The AFL average for contested mark is only 8.9, so we're well above that. But impressively, the Roos aren't too bad, so they're 8th for contested marks. So it's clearly an important part of their game. They're averaging 9.1 contested marks per game, so it's clearly an important part of their game, contested marks. It is for us. So look for the aerial battle to be critical. Pity Petty's not coming in from that perspective, but we don't lose much by having Melk stay in terms of contested marking. He's so brilliant one-on-one, as we saw at the beginning of the game against Richmond. Jeffo, I think, he's been awesome in terms of his marking. I happened to watch, because I didn't get the opportunity to watch the Hawthorn replay until a few nights ago. His game was better than I recall in terms of his ability to sort of compete in the air. Look for him to have a big game. I have no concerns at all about his kicking technique. I think it's actually really good. So he could have the old-fashioned breakout game, and hopefully it could be this. It could be this week. So in terms of also important is it marks inside 50, and the Roos are better than us in this place. So they're averaging 13.2 marks inside 50, and we're averaging 12.6. So they're number 6, we're number 9 for that, 10 for that stat. So yeah, contested marking will be critically important, and not just taking the contested marks, but also bringing the ball to ground. It's a crucial part of our game, really. I think it's overplayed, the sort of ball movement aspect of our game. Really, we kick long to a contest. If we don't mark the ball, bring it to ground, and win the ground ball and score from there. And the great example in that Hawthorn game, it was such a forward half. Turnovers were so critical in that game. So win the aerial battle, and we'll go a long way to winning this game. As I said before, I was surprised at how, their sort of statistical profile, the Roos, they perhaps I shouldn't have been, because Hawthorn under Clarkson were always about, good quality ball control, and they had excellent kicking side, and perhaps, Clarkson's looked to do the same thing at the Roos, but they're a high possession footy team, really. We're averaging 13.7, 8 disposals per scoring shot. They're 16 disposals per scoring shot. So, they just hold the ball a lot more. They control it. We're a go-forward team. They're a lateral team. Again, evidence of that. We're plus, 600 almost for metres gained per match, number 5 in the AFL. They're number 15 in the AFL for metres gained per match. Our our kick to handball ratio is 1.43. Their kick to handball ratio is 1.34. Roos number 16 for inside 50s per game. So very much not a forward team, sort of forward half team like us. So So I think that for that's going to be a critical thing, not letting them control the footy and the tempo, and to do that, close down space, really, that smash the bonnet, frontal pressure, really disrupt their ability to get that hand off the receive, the handball receive, the kick, not allow those easy lateral kicks and uncontested marks. So they love their uncontested marks. That's going to be important to shut that down, which is why I think shutting down Comden in the intercepts, but in particular Daniel will be important, and Luke Parker. They're the ones who, particularly Daniel, he's the one who likes to move that ball around the back half, and just not allowed them to do that. One of the things squeezing up is one of my notes here. The thing at the Docklands, I don't think we will squeeze up too aggressively. We won't, I think that we'll play the game long, like we did against the Dogs. But if we are able to take that control away from them, I can't see them generating enough score or turnovers or sort of forward half footy, actually. And I think that'll go a long way for us to win. And if we do successfully do that, I think we'll see their disposal numbers and in particular their uncontested marks well under their season average. That's what I expect to see. Don't give them a sniff. Said this about Tigers last week. I think it's the same. 6 to 8 day break is a big factor, but let's hopefully come out, take their energy away from them. It's a home game for the Roos. Take that wind out of their sails, not give them a sniff at all. I think that's what we'll do. We'll look to smash them early and keep going, hopefully. I really have a feeling that we'll keep going in this game and run the game out, though we do have a key game next week. So, maybe look to, if we are ahead, do what they did with Maxi last week, for instance, and he basically didn't play that last quarter. So, and when he did, he played a lot forward. So, the King again, in concert with his high performance with Selwyn Griffith and the high performance team, have been super clever with how they've used time on ground and roles, particularly for Maxi in the last 2 weeks. But don't give them a sniff. Get in front from the get-go. Take our chances. I think we'll be clear. Finally, the other key for winning, I think, is win the battle of the defences. We've been terrific defensively in the last 7 to 8 weeks, really brilliant. I don't think you can underestimate the importance of a defensive unit stringing blocks of games together. I think that it was one of the greatest things to watch us over the last decade is how strong our defensive unit has been and the synergy, but it takes time to build that synergy. And I've been so impressed, in particular that Hawthorn game, as I said, watching that replay, but also last week, how instinctive our defensive unit have become, how the synergy they're developing. And for me, that's the hallmark of all great defensive units. When they start doing handballs and you think, well, they haven't even looked who's there and they just know someone will be there. Or, someone like Colt coming in and cross and being third man in and helping out Lever, or, that unit is working so well together at the moment. CJ is playing a fantastic role. His intercept marking has been fantastic. I love Howes and his game. He's just so composed with a footy. Colt's just been a revelation at halfback flank. He's basically made a big challenge for them because I can't see Salem getting back into that defensive unit. I actually think he'll come in and play forward is my feeling, play at half forward flank. But yeah, I could not be more impressed with our defensive view where it's at, and it's trending in the right direction. Where, as I said, we were giving up 101.1 a game at round 10. It's now 89.9. Lever's been awesome. We're looking really strong in that space. And logic would suggest the way the game's been played at the moment with the fast ball movement end to end and low stoppages, as I said, 10 to 15% less stoppages than, that has been the average over the last 10 years or something, is that it's going to be harder for the defences because, than it was in the Hardwick Goodwin era because the ball's just moving so quick and defensive units are being asked to push right up, but on turnover then have to get back. Not only do they have to get back super quick, but they have to hold their structure on turnover, and that's something that we've really, really improved on. A really fluid zone defence. It's still a zone defence, but it's much more fluid, so logic suggests that takes longer to get right, but we're really getting it right. And I think key to that is having the same unit play week in, week out. So, I think from here on in, it's going to be critical that we don't get any injuries to the back seven at the moment because their synergy is really sort of taking shape. All right, so just to summarise a prediction, said last week about our game against the Tigers, that from this one to the round 7 game, that how perceptions had changed at the start of the season. We were, so to speak, peers of the Tigers. That's even more the case with the Roos. Personally, we were expected to be competing at the beginning of the season by most pundits and even footy fans for the Roos for that sort of 6 to 10 spot. So that, they are our peers, on any measure, I think, and or certainly would have been at the beginning of the season. I personally think they've flown under the radar a bit in terms of not being criticised. Or not probably getting the criticism that they probably deserve, because very much unlike us, they've had a super soft draw, and they've also had a dream run with injuries. So, like all teams, they've had some injuries, but I just think that they're not going as well as, if I was a Roos fan, that I'd want them to be at this stage of their rebuild. At best, they're just a solid mid-table team. Surely at this stage of their rebuild, you'd want them, they should be more than that, shouldn't they? They're 13th. They've got a percentage of 91, which is, that's one of the best stats in footy. That 100% is the absolute minimum benchmark. They've only won 8 times this year. And of those 8 wins, the only team that they've beaten above them on the ladder, who's currently above them, is the Blues, who are in 12th. So they're 13th and the Blues are 12th. I don't think they were. The Blues wouldn't have, when they did beat them, the Roos would have been ahead of them at that stage. So they haven't beaten any of the top teams, top 10 teams. They haven't beaten even the 11th team. And their remaining 6 games are all against teams in the top 10 at the moment. So before this round, 4 of them are top 6 teams, including us, obviously. They're a big chance of well, on their form, having only beaten 1 team above them, they're a big chance of losing all of those games. So this is a huge, huge, huge match for them. Lose it, and I can't see them making the wildcard round. And if they don't make 10 in the wildcard round, surely that's a fail given their draw, their great one with injury, and the players, the quality of players they've been able to bring in, or the draft picks they've had to bring in players. So. Really massive game for them. So, and a massive game for us, because we need to win this to shore up top 6. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Top 6 is, if we've got any chance of making any impact in the finals, got to finish top 6. And I mentioned last week on the podcast and in this in the preview pod that I think, in some ways it'd be better to finish 5th than 4th, avoid the trip to Perth. So, to finish 5th or 6th, or even higher, this is a critical game for us. So one of the things I've been loving about King is that he really chops and changes his tactics. And also his selection, as a result, his selections, depending on the opposition, the venue, and where we're at with our high performance program. That seems to have happened this week. And I love it because there's not one way of we have some keys to our game, which I think is territory, contest, and pressure. Yes, we're moving the ball better than we were, but I think that's overplayed. Still, that thinking about the first 4 or 5 games when we're playing that exciting footy, we play different ways. I think playing the Roos at Darklands will revert to the method we used there against the Dogs. So not a huge amount of overlap wave running and forward handball. Certainly not what we saw against the Tigers last week, where we had 570 odd metres gained by hand. The narrowness of Docklands make that method really, really difficult. So part of the reason why we are so successful and have such a great record as the MCG is we utilise the width of the MCG. Just think of how many of our goals and ball movement from the half back line are, run basically along the boundary line. We skirt that boundary line on both sides. The best example last week was that beautiful bit of play by Latrell that set up, I think, ultimately a goal to JVR. No, I think it set up the goal to Jeffo, I think. So that's difficult at Docklands, and so I don't think we'll see the same sort of overlap wave running that we did against the Tigers, and so therefore much lower metres gained in this match. So I think we'll see like we did against the Dodds, lots of long kicks around the ground. So lots of long kicks to a contest around the ground, but in particular, deep kicks inside 50 to the top of the goal square. I think that'll be a feature of how we'll play. Mark that ball, bring it to ground, win the ground ball, really stress test their defence. I think without a player like Pink is someone who's a big out for them in terms of that, the requirement to bring the ball to ground. Bring it to ground and let the ground ball winners go to work and score from there. That's been something that we've been terrific at. We were awesome against that in that respect against the Hawks. So in some ways a really similar game also to the way we played the Hawks on what was a sort of sticky deck down there. Watching that replay again really reinforced how much of that was forward half, almost like, under our best footy under Goodwin, where we really pressed the ball forward. Our best scoring quarters have generally coincided with high percentage of inside 50s. It was 60-40 or something in the first half against the Hawks, and I think we'll look to do the same thing. So look for high sort of 50-50s roughly where we're at, but look for 60-40 early on, get it in deep, and then also lots of pressure, get those forward half turnovers like we did against the Hawks. I think that's how this game will look. I think the big key is smashing them mercilessly all game. Massive pressure, win the contest, just hammer them. Hopefully Max Heath will take a high percentage of around the ground stoppages when he and Maxie are both on, though they don't often are not often on the ground at the same time. It'll be interesting to see if that happens. They hardly were at all last time they played together. But when they are on the ground together, hopefully Maxie Heath will take a high percentage of the around the ground stoppages, mitigate Maxie getting smashed by Jerry and co. The opportunity then is for Maxie to either float forward and be another marking up forward. His kicking for goal was improved out of sight this year, so he's a legitimate threat now as a forward target. And he also creates matchup nightmares. But equally, I think, float back into defence and play that role he's just made his own, where he floats back and takes intercept marks. Help out the fact that we're probably a little bit undersized height-wise down back this week. Make it difficult for Larky to in those one-out situations. Will reduce the number of one-outs. So I think that will be a really important feature of the game. It was super encouraging last week that our pressure rating was 204 in the last quarter. That'd be close to our highest or around the mark for our highest rated pressure quarter this season so far. That, to me, was a big, big thing. So 6 days into this, the players will have, I assume, had a light week on the track. And so I think we'll be fully wound up for this game. I think we'll look to go super hard from the get-go. And I think we'll win this game and win it quite comfortably. I'm looking for a 7 to 8 goal win. Sounds big, but I'm super confident. We will unpack it on Monday night. Andy's back on board. Can't wait to have him back on board on the Demonland podcast on Monday when we unpack this game. And I look forward to discussing a great win on Monday. And I'll be back next week on the Stats File preview pod to unpack or to preview, I should say, the massive, massive game on Friday night against the Cats. I'll try to get that done by Wednesday if I can. I've been Binman. This has been the Stats File preview podcast. Go Red Leggers!
It's a grand old flag. It's a high-flying flag. It's an emblem for me and for you. Well, it's the emblem of the team we love. Team of the red and the blue. Well, every heart beats true for the red and the blue as we sing a song for you. Should old acquaintance be forgot, keep your eye on the red and the blue. Where the team played fine in the year 39, we're the team that no one can lick. Find us there after the final bell with the spirit of 1926. Well, every heart beats true for the red and the blue as we sing this song to you.